Hey everyone, so today's video is going to be all about foundation tools. So what's going to be the best method for you to apply your foundation with. In this video I'm going to be using the Sigma flat kabuki brush, the beauty blender and also my fingers. I'm just going to be showing you guys the different methods of application just so then you can decide which one is going to work best for you personally. So the first makeup tool I'm going to be talking about is the beauty blender. Now this is one of the original beauty blenders. There are a lot of different makeup sponges out there that you can get, but they're not all created equal. So I would definitely recommend, if you were trying a beauty blender or makeup sponge for the first time, the original beauty blender is really good, or otherwise the Real Techniques one is supposed to be really good, and also the Stila sponge is also a really great one. What makes a bad sponge is when it's really hard. You want it to be a really nice soft bouncy type sponge because you want to bounce it onto the skin when you're using it. With the sponge, your pros and cons are it gives a really beautiful airbrushed finish, so that's a major plus, and it's probably the way to make your foundation look the most like skin. The cons I would say with using a beauty blender is that you do have to use a lot more product. When I was filming the little clips that I'll be adding into this video, I did have to use 5 pumps of foundation when I was using the beauty blender. Now your beauty blender is reasonably expensive for the original beauty blender. I think in Australia it's about $28 to buy one, so it's about the same cost as buying a brush, and then also they are a lot more disposable than a brush, so you do have to replace them more often. With regards to cleaning, they are pretty easy to clean, I find. Some people do struggle cleaning them, but I use a bar of soap. This one's really dirty because I just used it for the tutorial to show you how I use it, but yeah, I usually use a cake soap and just run the beauty blender onto the cake of soap and then just squeeze out all the excess. And when you're using these, you have to wet them anyway before you use it, so it doesn't really take that much extra time to just give it a quick clean in between. So I will insert a clip of how I use the beauty blender so then you can see if you would like to use this method for application. So your beauty blender is designed to be used wet, so I just included this clip of me wetting one. So all you have to do is just wring it out underneath the tap and make sure it's nice and wet, and it should double in size from what you first started out with. And here I'm just taking a hand towel and just squeezing out any excess water. And for these clips I just used the Benefit Professional Primer, and then I used the Estee Lauder Double Wear Foundation in the shade 2W2 Rattan. Double Wear doesn't come with a pump, but I have a MAC foundation pump on mine. So I always apply my foundation onto the back of my hand and then dot my beauty blender into that foundation and then apply it onto the skin. It's really easy to use. You basically just bounce it up and down on top of the skin. And then my hair was really annoying me, so I just put it out of the way with a headband. Because my beauty blender is wet, it's not going to absorb up as much product as it would as if it was dry, but it does definitely absorb more product than using your fingers or a brush does. Around my hairline I just moved my hair out of the way and just kind of blend it in, and then I did have to go in with more foundation to do the other side, so I added another 2 pumps of foundation. I mostly just use my beauty blender for special occasions because I'm too lazy to get up from my makeup desk and go and wet the sponge. And I'm going to show you how I use concealer as well. So I'm taking the Urban Decay Naked Skin Concealer in the shade Light Warm and just applying that underneath my eyes. And then I take the pointed end of the beauty blender just to pat that into the skin as well. So that is what the foundation and concealer is looking like now that it's all been blended in with the beauty blender. So the next method of application that I tried out was my fingers. So I used to use my fingers ages ago, but ever since I've started to use a brush, that's what I tend to use most often. With your fingers you definitely do use a lot less product, so that is a really good bonus. I only use 2.5 pumps of foundation to do my whole face with my fingers. With your fingers as well, it's really easy. You've always got them with you, so easy to travel with. I guess the downsides with using your fingers is that you have to wash your hands, make sure they're really clean before you're using them, but at the same time you're going to have to do that before you do your skincare and everything anyway, so it's not exactly an extra step. The thing I hate the most is just the feeling of foundation on my hands after and when I'm applying it. I just hate that greasy feeling of foundation on my fingers. That's why I generally use a brush. I did find with using my fingers it probably took the longest to blend my product out. Keep that in mind, it can sometimes take a little bit of extra time just because I suppose your brush or your sponge probably does absorb up a little bit of your product, so it does make it slightly easier to blend out as well. So just another factor to keep in mind. So I will also include a clip of me using my fingers so you can see if you would like to use that method of application. Here I am all fresh faced again, so I used the Esquissage Beauty Revealing Eye and Lip Contour Cream and the Kate Somerville Oil Nourish Moisturizer just to prep my skin. So this time I'm using my fingers to apply my foundation and just showing you how that works. And I'm having a lot of fun doing my jazz hands. So once again, same exact foundation. I'm using 2.5 pumps this time, and I'm just dipping in my finger and then applying that onto my face. So I'm just sort of starting from the center of the face and then just sort of blending out towards the outer perimeters of the face. Using your fingers does still look nice and it does give a really nice finish, but I just find it takes a little bit longer, so that's why I don't usually use them myself. So then I usually just pat the foundation onto my skin as well, just to build up the coverage rather than just swiping. And then once again, I'm just going to use concealer and just show you how I do that with my fingers. And all I do is just pat that into the skin. And like I said, I usually use less product when I'm using my fingers, but when I did this, I used the exact same amount, so it was a bit harder to blend out, but I probably could have got away with using about half of the product. Applying your foundation with your fingers is a great method of application if you're on a budget. Now my hands felt so gross after applying that, they just felt disgusting, but it does leave the skin looking really beautifully flawless as well. And then lastly, the final method that I was using was the Sigma Flat Kabuki F80 brush. This is what I use most often to do my foundation. I use this on a daily basis. I just find a brush really easy to use. Still gives really good coverage, not too expensive. It will cost you about the same as what a beauty blender would, but it will last you a lot longer. A beauty blender is really only designed to last about 3 months, whereas a brush is designed to last at least 2 years. So do keep that in mind. Once again, like with the beauty blender, not all brushes are created equal. You can get good ones and you can get bad ones. I really like the Sigma F80. It is a really great option. I also do use the Makeup Geek foundation stippling brush, which I did use in my beginner's foundation, concealer and powder video. And then I also love the Real Techniques buffing brush. So they're all much of a muchness. There's not a huge amount of difference, even though they do look different. The buffing brush is a little bit more rounded. I would use them all in the exact same way, and they all are really great brushes. I haven't had any trouble with any of them shedding or being hard to use or anything like that. With brushes, one thing that can be annoying is you do have to wash them, so you have to keep them really nice and clean. You're supposed to wash your brushes usually like once a week or once every 2 weeks. If you're lazy like me, you just have multiple brushes and you only do it about once every 6 weeks, but I have different brushes, so I do rotate them around, so I'm not using the same brush all the time. The reason you want to keep your brush so clean is if you do get a bit of product built up into the brush, it is a lot harder, you'll find, to blend. It can go a little bit more streaky. And then the other reason is because you just don't want bacteria to just be like growing in your brush and then you're using it every day and it's just festering and growing really nasty. So just make sure you're washing your brushes regularly. So I forgot to introduce this clip, but once again I just prepped my skin in the exact same way, and I'm using 3 pumps of the Estee Lauder Double Wear this time. I did apply a little bit too much product onto my brush for a start, so I just had to apply a little bit more onto the other side of my face as well, just to make it easy enough to blend. With any foundation application, it's a lot easier if you start out with less product and then build up with more. When I'm using a brush, I use a combination of buffing and stippling just to get the coverage that I'm after and make sure everything's really well blended. I usually do a couple of layers to build up the coverage, and I make sure to blend down the neck as well. I do spend a bit of time just perfecting my foundation just to make sure everything's so blended out and make sure it all looks really nice and smooth. Then I'm doing concealer for the third and final time. I just find it blends out so fast and easy with this brush. I usually do use a smaller brush in this area just to get right in there, but you can just use the same brush for your foundation. I did quickly want to mention a couple of other brushes while I'm here. I haven't done a demo of these brushes just because the video would take way too long, and also because I don't really use these brushes as often, but I just thought I would let you know my thoughts on them and what sort of other brushes are out there if you're interested in trying them. So I've also got the Sigma F60 foundation brush. Now this is your traditional paddle style brush. There's lots and lots of brushes around like this brush, and how you use this brush is you just paint it on your skin basically like a paintbrush. These brushes are good, but I do find that you can get a bit of streakiness and they do just take a bit longer to blend out, I find. So that's why I don't usually reach for this brush hardly ever to use my foundation. But if you do like using this type of brush, then totally just keep using it. You've got to do what works the best for you. And then the other brush you may have seen around is the Sigma Duo Fiber F50 brush. Now once again, there's lots of different versions of these on the market, not just Sigma do them, MAC does them, lots of different brands have have these style of brush. So they're a duo fiber, they have a longer white hair and then a shorter black hair. And these ones don't give it as much coverage as your more dense kabuki style brushes, like the Sigma one or the Makeup Geek one. They are a similar shape, but you can tell that the bristles are a lot longer and they do get a lot finer and really soft at the end. So that makes it really great for buffing out product. And I do find that this type of brush works best for a lighter type foundation or a BB or a CC cream. So with this brush I usually do use it with just a CC cream. I do find it blends it out really nicely and it gives a really nice airbrushed finish, but it won't give you much coverage. So if you are using a full coverage, it's not really going to be that easy to blend. If you are using a more runny full coverage foundation, you probably can still use this, and just stippling it onto the skin will give you that more flawless full coverage finish. But you're just supposed to use it really lightly and just use the white hairs. You don't want your product to get into the black hair. And then you can buff your product in with this type of a brush as well. To be honest, I don't really reach for this brush very often, just because like I said, I don't use a BB cream and a CC cream very often, and that's all I use this brush for. And then the other brushes I just quickly wanted to talk about are the Sigma Kabuki brushes as well. So these brushes here come as a 5-piece set with the Sigma F80 as well. So if you're looking for it on the Sigma website, it's the Sigma Sigmax Kabuki kit. So out of all of these brushes, obviously my favorite is the F80. I use that one hands down the most. Next would probably be the flat angled Kabuki, which is the F88. I find this one's really good for like building up coverage on areas, but I find this brush is my hardest brush to clean because it's so dense. The bristles are really short at the back here, so it does make it really difficult to clean because you have to shampoo it like 3 or 4 times to get all of the product out. The round Kabuki is a really good brush. This here is a really good brush if you ever need to buff out any thicker formulations of product. This one here does a really good job because it kind of can work it into the skin a little bit more, and it is that, once again, a little bit more dense than the F80, so it will buff that a little bit easier. Then there's the Sigma Tapered Kabuki. This one I mostly use for under eye concealer. You could use this for foundation as well, but if you're just to pick out one brush, I wouldn't probably recommend just grabbing this one. If you do have it though, it is really good for using for under the eyes for concealer, or also for cream contour as well. So those are the 2 main uses I would use this brush for. And then you've got the Sigma Angled Kabuki F84. So once again, this brush here is pretty similar to the other brushes. Great for foundation. You can use it for cream contour. You can use it to set under the eyes. But if I was to get one brush, it wouldn't be this one. But I do use it as part of the set. So that is my thoughts on methods of application for foundation. So I hope you found this video really helpful and learned something new, and maybe you might try out a new method of application. So just bear in mind that makeup comes down to personal preference. So what I prefer to use to apply my makeup might not be what you prefer to use and may not work the best for you. So you've got to just try out a few different methods and see what is going to be the best and most easiest method to use for yourself personally. Thank you all so much for watching. I do have a tutorial on this look as well if you are interested in seeing it. That will probably be the next video to go up after this one. Please give this video a big old thumbs up if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe and make sure you leave me a comment. It really helps me out when you do these things because it just means my videos get that much more noticed. Thank you so much for watching. Bye! Make sure you also check out my glitter smoky eye tutorial.